All right, this is the PWI Podcast. I'm your host, PWI senior writer Al Castle, joined as always by my co-host Brian Solomon. How's it going?
Okay, hanging in there in the brutal cold.
Yes, we were just before we started recording talking about how cold it is and how we're navigating our dogs having to poop in the front yard that is covered with snow and cold. So yes, that's for another episode. We'll save that. And joining us again, our UK correspondent Jason McVeigh. How's it going?
All good. Thank you for having me back. No snow here, but plenty of rain as usual.
Yes. Yeah. Also, I guess a problem for the dogs. You need to hold the umbrella over them, I suppose.
True.
So lots to talk about. Obviously, we're coming off of a Royal Rumble weekend, one of the biggest shows of the year, and sets the stage for WrestleMania. I guess we have something of an idea now what WrestleMania looks like, or at least it's kind of starting to take shape. But I think the story is in how unclear it remains even now. I mean, it does feel like it's not super clear what the hook is this year. So we'll talk about all of that, all the falling out of the Rumble, looking ahead to Mania, and hopefully other current events. I mean, since our last show where we had comic book artist Kyle on, we didn't really get much into current events. So really, since we've last done a current events discussion, I think we've got 4 new world champions in 4 different companies. So a lot has happened, and we'll try to get into some of that. Real quick, let me tell you about the latest issue of Pro Wrestling Illustrated featuring Mike Santana, one of those new world champions, on the cover. My interview with Mike right after he lost the title and before he won it back. Also in here is the annual Tag Team 100 featuring the number 1 ranked tag team, the Hardys, who you got to talk to, right, Jason?
I did, yes. I have to say, both Matt and Jeff were delighted. They spoke a lot about how, as kids, they would rush to the store to find the PWI and go to the back and look at the ratings section to see the tag teams listed. So it means a lot to them, I think, and you get to hear their thoughts not in this issue.
How do they feel about sort of this time in history for them? I mean, obviously they're closer to the end of their careers than the beginning, but they are doing really great work. I mean, do you feel that or did you get the sense that they feel that they're still kind of in their prime?
Very much so. I think a lot of that has to do as well. I think they feel reinvigorated by the teams that they're getting to work with and working with younger teams. And while they, spoke highly of the Dudley Boys and getting to have that final match with them, you got the sense that really it's the young teams that they've been getting to work with that's really kind of inspiring them. And, for my money, Matt and Jeff are doing some of the best work they have done in decades.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. While we're on subject, because we might not have a chance to talk about it later, I might as well bring up we're here TNA on AMC. Now we're a few weeks in. I think pretty universally, people were disappointed with that first show. I thought it was really bad. I mean, just a huge miss in so many different ways. And it's too bad because it's the cliche of you don't get a second chance to make a first impression. But talk about really kind of stumbling at the starting line. What did you think of TNA's first show on AMC, Brian?
Well, I mean, it was TNA. I mean, that's the thing. I think, and I'm not saying that TNA is terrible. I don't think I felt as strongly negative about it as most people. I just felt like business as usual. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. It didn't feel enough like something to wow you. Let's say if you're tuning in for the first time, it's the first time that TNA has been, let's just put it this way. It's the widest availability on cable that they've had in, I don't know how long, on a channel like this, maybe since
Spike, right? I mean,
I was going to say since Spike. They were on half the channels they've been on. I never even heard of until they got on them, and Destination America. Like what even was that? So I just feel like it definitely wasn't special enough. I think if this was just a regular episode of TNA on Access TV or whatever, nobody would be calling it out as a particularly bad show. It just didn't feel special enough.
Yeah, and again, I talked to Santana right after he lost the title. And it was clear from our conversation there that they had something in mind, that they had a bigger plan. And I assume the plan was, well, we want you winning that title in front of the biggest audience possible, really kind of a statement in our debut on our new TV home. And hindsight's 2020, but I don't know that they got anything out of that. I think it would have been stronger having him go in as the strong, kind of established champion who's super over, rather than winning it back there. The match with Kazarian wasn't great. I think there was some sloppiness in there. There was just, I think for TNA has been trying to change the narrative, from, we're sort of low rent bush leagues to we are a big player. We're coming after AEW essentially to be number 2. And I didn't get that sense throughout the show. I mean, I thought the production value really lacked. It was empty seats, dimly lit. I mean, it felt kind of low rent. A lot of the acts that they chose to showcase, I thought were the wrong ones. I thought the stuff with the Elegance brand or whatever it was just bad TV, up and down. Jason, you're kind of our TNA guy. Did you think they put their best foot forward?
I did not, and it will shock Harry Burkett to hear me criticize TNA. It was a terrible first show. From someone who does watch every week, they have put on much better shows. It was really bad. It was badly formatted. It was badly booked. It was badly presented. It looked cheap, I thought, which was bizarre because 2 days later, they did the Genesis pay-per-view that looked a million times better.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know what the reason was, but it felt like they were out of their depth. Now, I have to say, the last 2 episodes have corrected that somewhat. They've looked much better. They have featured better talent, and they've furthered storylines, and you've had a good story development with the system and changes there and members being dropped and new members added. The kind of thing that probably should have happened on that debut show, but no, the first one was very bad.
What was so puzzling, maybe the most puzzling thing about that show was that not that they had empty seats. You're going to deal with that in 2025 for any company that's not WWE, and even WWE sometimes these days. But that, they had their pseudo celebrities at ringside, and they would go to interview them, and it is just a ghost town behind them. Just, like a lone guy walking by, and, you see like the tumbleweeds, rolling around in the back. And it's like, why are you shooting this? It's just so puzzling. That's like wrestling production 101 is don't shoot the empty seats, Yeah, puzzling stuff. Anyhow, a few weeks in, I think they're doing better. And they certainly have a lot going on, and a lot of it is captured here in the latest issue of PWI. Go check it out, pwi-online.com. And while you're there, subscribe, please. You can also get back issues. You can get PWI merch, whatever you need, over at pwi-online.com. All right, let's talk about the Royal Rumble. After WrestleMania, probably the biggest show of the year. Brian, huge surprises. I imagine Liv was my pick for the Women's Rumble. I didn't pick Roman, but clearly he was probably, in the top 3 vote getters as far as most likely winners. What do you think of the decision for each of the Rumble winners?
I don't have a big problem with it. I was secretly hoping for Gunther at the end there, just because I thought, what an incredible night. He retires AJ Styles and wins the Royal Rumble. I mean, the guy is unstoppable. But no, I'm fine with the Roman Reigns win, because I feel like it gives him a chance to jump back into the mix now, because it feels like this is the real return of Roman Reigns. Like, he's been pretty far off the radar lately, and it's been interesting, especially now with so much attention recently being devoted to Cena. And I wonder if that was intentional to keep him off TV, so to partly underline Cena more as the number one guy on TV at that moment, the number one person for people to be paying attention to. I don't know, but this is a great way of kind of like reestablishing him. Like, remember this guy? He was like the guy everybody was talking about for 4 years. Well, he's back now, unequivocally back. He's going to be in the main event again, or in a main event, or whatever it is. So, I mean, I thought that was fine. It's just I thought particularly the women's match, the finish was great. I mean, that was just a really, really well done, with the three of them fighting on the apron and all that kind of thing. I think Liv, I have my criticisms about her just in general. I think she's great in some ways. In some ways, she leaves me a little bit cold. But I mean, I think from a star power point of view, she's a great choice to have win that match. Even if, I guess it does tip the hand a little bit about
what is the match. Do you assume it's Stephanie Vaquer?
It can't be Jade Cargill. I just can't imagine. I think it's got to be Stephanie Vaquer, unless they're going to change it up between now and then. Whereas I feel like with the men's one, it really could go either way. I could see it going either way potentially, as far as who he might go against.
I don't. I assume it's Punk, in part because
there was a big.
What else are they going to do with Punk? And
I know. Well, here's the thing. There was a big tease at the end involving McIntyre when he came out and he screwed Cody Rhodes, where him and Reigns had kind of a standoff, but that could mean it's going to be. I mean, it could mean it's going to be Cody and McIntyre again at Mania, although I don't know.
Yeah,
but the thing is, though,
with Fatu,
Punk and Reigns and McIntyre do have a history. There is he even has kept it alive. McIntyre talking about how, even though he's a heel now, basically he still hates all the bloodline guys and everything that they represented. So, I mean, they could still do that. And I think if they do that, the move might be to do Punk and Cody as the other side of the main event. But I mean, I don't know. I mean, I do feel like they could go either way. What would I rather see? I would rather see Reigns and Punk myself.
It feels like a marquee match. And that said, even that, I don't know if it's the strongest, WrestleMania main event. But it's funny how
that's a big one. That is a big.
It is, but it's also one that we kind of got last year, right? I mean, it's a little bit of a rerun. I mean, it was a three-way with Seth last year, but we saw them in the ring in the main event of WrestleMania. Wasn't one-on-one. In terms of star power, yeah, that's about as much star power as you have in WWE right now, short of Cody. You run into a little of an issue, potentially both being baby faces, assuming both stay baby faces. But Jason, I mean, is that from a marquee standpoint, is that a WrestleMania worthy main event?
This is where I struggle with this, because I don't have a problem with anyone that won the Rumble, and Reigns winning it was fine, but it's just the point that you made. What's the match? We've seen Roman and Drew. We've seen Roman and Punk, a version of it at least. Okay, not a singles one, which I assume as well that's where they're going with it. But neither one of them really grab me at the moment, which is the concern. Like Brian, I was kind of pulling for Gunther, because in my head, I had already written the PWI Weekly with Gunther as our wrestler of the week, because he retired AJ and he won the Rumble. And I think as well, like, Gunther's had the momentum. Like, he retired Cena. He, did this with AJ. He's arguably the most despised wrestler on the roster right now, fan reaction-wise. So part of me thinks that would have been the way to go. But look, there's no problem with Roman winning it. But yeah, it leads into the bigger problem, which we'll talk about, which is what's ahead for WrestleMania.
I didn't realize at first that Gunther was even in the match, because I figured, well, he's not going to do double duty. And then he came out, and my initial reaction was, oh, he's going to win. But then when he started selling his leg as soon as he was in there, that's when I said, okay, no, he's not winning. They're going to they're trying to establish that he's not 100%. So, I don't see that. If he's selling his leg and then wins, that's a babyface thing. That's not a heel thing. So I was hopeful, but I kind of knew they weren't going to do that.
I think in both the men's, and this isn't really WWE's fault. I mean, it's just expectations. But I think in both the men's and the women's Rumble, there was hope that 30 was going to be a big surprise. For the women, Bianca, who I think was the favorite to win it all, and she wasn't in it at all. And for the men, Chris Jericho, right? That was the rumor. I don't know how realistic that ever was, but there was a thought that it could be Jericho, and certainly that would have gotten a big pop. In the end, we didn't get either of them.
We got Hobbs though. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, but you got Hobbs in front of an audience that has no idea who he is, and so you got no reaction.
No reaction, I know, but
yeah.
But he
You got
looked good
Mr.
in there.
Iguana.
Mr. Iguana. I called my wife into the room when that happened because he is her favorite wrestler by far. I literally said, "Jamie, get in here. Mr. Iguana just came out," and she came out. Hobbs was a funny one because my son, who is 8 years old, he goes to me, "Daddy, what are those big lumps on the sides of his neck?" And I said, "Peter, those are called muscles. Wrestlers used to have a lot of those, and they were very big." Like, he's so used to seeing these skinny wrestlers that when he saw it was jacked like that, he didn't even know what he was looking at, you know?
Yeah, I was just watching Cody's podcast with Finn Balor, and Cody was talking about how these days Cody passes as a big guy, you know, because the roster is so small that he's among like the bigger guys in the company. So yeah, Hobbs comes in there and just everybody looks tiny in comparison. But while we're on the subject of him, I mean, Jason, what do you think that the upside is for? What do they call him now? Royce Keys, right?
Royce Keys.
Yeah, I mean, certainly like a guy McMahon would have loved, Vince would have loved. But granted, it's Saudi Arabia, so maybe not the best kind of like test audience. But even among WWE fans, I don't know that he's a guy that fans look at as a big star or a sure thing or anything like that.
I think even if the show had been in the US, Hobbs' debut would have suffered because Obafemi was in the match.
Yeah.
Because the aura that Obafemi has dwarfs a lot of people. And whenever he came out, the reaction, even from that crowd that he got, and I think the same would have happened in the States. I think the upside for Royce Keys will be how they use him and how they present him. They kind of need to push him as a badass, a killer, someone who's going to come in and throw people around like a Brock Lesnar did. And it's going to rely on that. But it's bad timing in the sense that it is timing with Obafemi joining the main roster, who I think is in for a monstrous push.
Yeah. Hobbs is somebody where they can, or Keys, they could build him from the ground up. Like, he's not someone who's coming in with the momentum of, say, a Jade Cargill or a Cody Rhodes, certainly not, and other people that have come in and it's been like, or even Ricky Stark / Saints. Like, he's someone who had really cooled off in AEW. He doesn't have the same momentum as, this big guy this star from AEW came over. So it's great to have him, but he is somebody that they have the opportunity to really like recreate. And I think that they could do that. I mean, he's someone who is really good to have in the mix, a guy like that with a look like that. And I think it's very good to have him. Do I think he's going to, be the center of the company? No, but he's great to have in the deck.
I don't think it's the worst idea in the world to put him in NXT, and help. But it does become about sort of like who does he work with there and match styles, and he's probably better suited on the main roster to be impressive with that size versus in NXT. It's also worth noting, there's been criticism of WWE and of Paul Levesque for not pushing black male wrestlers. And it was no coincidence that at the Rumble, I mean, at one time you had Trick Williams and Obafemi and Royce Keys and Javon Evans. It was noteworthy, and that's good. I mean, I'm glad to see that they're responding. They're actually, because I think this was a blind spot for them for a little while, and you can ignore it, or you can kind of like plant your feet and deny that it's happening. Or you can be proactive to do something about it, and it looks like they are, and that's good.
Well, I said it many times before that people forget this also was initially called out in AEW years ago. The difference was that Tony Khan immediately seemed to listen and change course, and what it led me to believe was I don't think he had any bad intentions. I think he was just an old school wrestling fan from the 80s and 90s who was picturing in his head the wrestling of the 80s and 90s. I really do believe that. And I think he realized and said, "Oh, wow, they're right." Whereas I think now I'm not one of these people that's out there saying, "Oh, Triple H is definitely a racist and this and that." I mean, I think that's really jumping. But what I do think is He's a much more set in his ways kind of guy. He's much more the type of person that if he gets called out for things, his response is going to be to double down and dig in and just say, screw you, I know what I'm doing, than Tony Khan. And so I think that might be why it seems to be much more difficult to get away from those accusations, especially because you look at NXT and that is not the case at all.
Yeah, they were always there in the pipeline. They just weren't being moved up.
Right. So they have some work to do. I agree with that.
Yeah. So I'm glad to see that. As far as, generally big picture here, I mean, we are in February now, a couple months away from WrestleMania. I feel like, I mean, granted, Cena still hadn't turned heel this time last year. So you've got Elimination Chamber where they could still play some cards. But it does feel like for the first time in a long time that this is a company without, I don't want to say without direction, but without that kind of like ace in the deck or whatever the metaphor is. But what is 2026 about? What is WrestleMania about? If the talk is a Cody, Drew, and maybe a three-way with Jacob Fatu. Cody and Drew have been wrestling since the summer, right? I mean, so it hardly feels fresh. Can you do something? Hell in a Cell, do they go the route of turning Cody heel? I think that might feel a little bit like a retread of Cena last year. But I don't doubt that they'll come up with something, but it really does feel like they are caught now in a point in time where a lot of what they had been working on for years and years, and they get credit for doing great work in terms of long-term storytelling for years and years, but it's over. Like those stories have largely come to an end, and you don't have John Cena, you don't have The Rock. What is that big thing?
I think that there's a decent chance. I'm not saying it will work, but I think there's a decent chance that they're going to try to recreate lightning in a bottle and try to kick off a new kind of Roman Reigns thing at WrestleMania, like he'll get it back. And it reminds me in a way of like every time there's a really hot period, that is the knee-jerk reaction is we have to figure out a way to like do it again. Like they did it with Hogan. They struggled after the Attitude Era, and there was all this kind of like, let's try and recreate Austin or The Rock or something. And I feel like that is a very possible direction. They may go, and I don't know which title, obviously, they may just go like, you know what? Things are cooling off. Okay, let's see if we could do it again. I think that's very possible. I just don't know at whose expense that would be. I think it would make more sense for him to win it from somebody like a Punk because, McIntyre is on a roll, whereas Punk seems to be winding down, honestly.
Yeah. And I agree. One thing that I think has sort of crystallized in the last few months is that Roman Reigns is the biggest star in wrestling. I think probably even above Cody.
I think so.
Right. And part of it is sort of the rarity of seeing Roman. He still feels like a special attraction. But to your point, Brian, does that mean, they got some kind of commitment for Roman to be a little more full-time this year? Because I think that only works what you're talking about. And I don't think it's the worst idea in the world in that he's great. He does terrific work. But again, is there some commitment on his part? Like, all right, we need you working this year.
To give it the best chance of actually working and being successful, they would need that. However, that said, I don't think there's any guarantee at all that they got that, because this could be like what I mentioned before is when they would try to do Hogan Part 2 or Part 3 or whatever, that would be what sunk that, would be that he would only have one foot in the water. It would be part of what it just didn't feel the same anymore. So it could be a repeat of that. I'm not saying it's going to work. I'm just saying I think they may try it.
The flip side of that argument is part of why Roman is so special is because we don't see him that much, right? I mean, if he became, you kind of saw it with Cody. When Cody just became kind of a regular part of the show, it started feeling a little less special. So, Jason, I mean, could that be? I don't want to make too much of it. The answer to WWE's problems, because they're still in really terrific shape, but you do wonder. And also, isn't Roman like right around 40 right now? You know, and
41 this year, yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's nuts that might be the direction they go to.
Which makes him quite young in the scheme of things.
Yeah. Certainly younger than Punk, and
Cody are the same age.
Is that right? Well, Cody just turned 40, I think, right? So
he's also turning 41 this year. They both are. Yeah.
My concern is that it's the schedule thing. Whenever he had his epic reign before with the belts and stuff, it kind of worked in his favor because he was a heel. And he didn't have to be there every week, and it was part of his shtick that, you know, this is beneath me to be here this week and everything else. If they're doing that with him as a babyface, it kind of lacks, I don't know, I just don't think you can commit to that then. But what's the end game of that? Where does it go? If Roman isn't on TV every week, what do we have? Just a bunch of heels coming out and saying, well, Roman Reigns isn't here. And everyone's like, yeah, you're right. He's not here. He should be here.
Right. I think they have to have him around at least, not that he needs to wrestle all the time. He shouldn't. But at least to do promos, to be involved in angles and confrontations, he should be around most of the time.
Part of me thinks this is like Gunther would have been a better option to go this way with, because he had all of this momentum and because he's getting, you know, booed out of the building when he's in. Do you strap the rocket to him and try again? I know he's been champion before, but do you put the belt on him and let him run with it for the rest of the year and just annihilate people and make it just seem again like this man is unbeatable? He's beaten everybody. He's retiring people. Well, to me, there's more cachet on that than there is in a Roman Reigns return.
There is a lot of upside for that, and I'll tell you why I think so. And I know you said he had been world champion before, but even when he was, he was in Cody's shadow. They even had, when they put him against each other, Gunther lost and cleanly. And so I think there would be an opportunity to have Gunther now as not just a heel world champion, but the heel world champion, like the overarching guy, almost like the way Roman Reigns was when he was at his worst as a heel. I'm not saying he could be another Roman Reigns. I'm not saying that, but a very different type of top, really bad, like Brock Lesnar was, just that, like, he's on top. He's not 1B, he's 1A. I think there's a chance to do that if they want.
But then you've got to have
the momentum and heat that he's got. Sorry, Al.
Right. But then you got to have somebody on deck to be the guy to topple him. And not necessarily identify that guy right now, but that's got to be what you're working toward. And I don't see who that guy is in terms of any new faces. And that is kind of the problem. That's why, my thought was that if I had to pick one person to win the Rumble, I thought it would be Braun Breaker, because I thought it's sort of like the youth movement. Yeah, I mean, could I have been any more wrong? You got but a guy in his 20s with a ton of upside, and there clearly is part of them that is mindful of it, because it looks like the other person they're looking to elevate quickly is Jacob Fatu. He's a lot older too. I mean, he's another guy who's got to be his late 30s, I would think. Gunther also. I mean, none of these guys are kids. The youngest of them being Braun Breaker, as far as a guy who is under 30 and near the top of the cards. But it does feel like, at the end of every WrestleMania, I sort of start to think like, what is WrestleMania next year? And you fantasize about like, who will be elevated and who will be the new main event star? And inevitably, it's just the same people who were in the main event this year.
It's kind of like process.
The pieces around, and this is not new. I mean, throughout the mid 2000s, it was some combination of Randy Orton, John Cena, Triple H, move the pieces around, and it feels sort of the same now with Punk, Roman, and Cody, and you can move a few others, but it does get to be a problem when the roster is getting a lot older, and the next generation of guys who are on deck to be your top guys are in their late 30s, so not much of a youth movement at all. What do you guys think about? One thing we haven't talked about, and kind of burying the lead here, Drew McIntyre is the WWE champion, which caught a lot of people by surprise. Jason, what did you make of that decision, and what, if anything, does it say about Cody Rhodes? Because when he dropped it, I was a little surprised, but I think my thinking was, all right, this is how you keep things fresh. Drew's going to have a 3-week title reign, and Cody's winning it back at the Royal Rumble. And now it looks like, at least for now, the plan is to stay with Drew for at least a little while going into Mania. Again, what do you think about the wisdom behind that? And then what if anything does it say about Cody?
Drew's a fine champion. Like, there's no question on that. The timing of it really surprised me, because I just thought, okay, Cody has it now. He's going to carry it through. Because bear in mind, he only got it back at SummerSlam, so to lose it again, Christmas, New Year, seemed a bit soon, but it depends. I'm not entirely convinced Drew will have it by the time WrestleMania rolls around, but I don't know. WWE, just looking at it, is starting to have a problem that AEW has had for a few years, and they have a good guy problem, in that there aren't that many good guys bubbling under that you think he could dethrone Drew for the world title. Like, Cody is still the obvious choice for it. The reaction to Cody, and it may just be because it's their European crowds and everything else, but Cody was booed out of the building in Germany when he lost the belt to Drew. And he received that in a few places. Now, it's been better since he's been back in North America, and the reaction to him in Saudi Arabia was good. I don't know if they'll turn Cody yet, which is an even bigger problem if they do, because then who really is your top babyface?
Is it Jacob Fatu? I wonder if that's the move, because in the interaction that they had, there was that really good promo segment between Cody and Jacob Fatu leading up to Saturday night's main event. Cody was sort of heelish, right? I mean, he was kind of like the buttoned up a guy looking down on the guy who was in prison, sort of like looking his nose down on him. So I wondered if that was sort of a harbinger of things to come.
Well, if Jacob Fatu is supposed to be built to this heel, and I agree, to this face, I agree about the interview making Cody look like more like the heel. The way that Cody lost the title, though, having Jacob Fatu come in there and just cost him the match, just go after Drew in that way, even though Drew's the heel, to me, that just made him immediately into somebody that a lot of the fans would dislike, because he cost Cody the title. I just thought, if that's your plan, that's a weird way to start it.
Yeah. Is Cody Rhodes stale?
I don't. Are you asking me or Jason?
Either of you. Go ahead, Brian.
Okay. I don't know if he's stale, but I think that there has been a problem, not so much with him, but with putting him in compelling stories since he won the title. I'm not going to say there hasn't been anything interesting. That's not true. And he's had some great matches, but sometimes it feels like he's treading water with some of these. Like, it just sort of feels like, well, we got to put somebody in against him, like, Shinsuke Nakamura when they would do, things like that, or the AJ Styles thing. And he'll usually have a great match. And I'm not saying everything has to be the end of the world, the be all, end all. Hogan and lots of great champions did that, where it's just like, here's the next challenger, here's the next feud. It's not everything's going to be the mega powers. But I feel like there's been a struggle, and I don't put that on him. And I really think it's a creative issue. I think we've gotten into this zone now where the booking is it's almost like the booking is so heelish that it's hard to continue to make a babyface compelling. Like, Roman Reigns worked because they seem to be really good at creating this obnoxious, evil, self-serving character. Like, they're very comfortable doing that. But to have a sustained good guy on top, it seems to be something they're having trouble with. Creatively.
Yeah, and I feel like Cody's like calling card has been these real personal storylines where he's got a great knack, like his father did, of making every rivalry feel like intensely personal. And Cody loves to turn on the waterworks and start crying and giving some real like inspirational story. it feels like maybe they've gone to the well too many times with that, and so they've tried to manufacture that with Drew, and it hasn't totally rung true. I mean, like when Drew goes the route of bringing up Cody's dad or something like that, or the picture on the bus, it's the real American dream. It's just, to me, a little eye rolling, like, oh, this again. We got to take shots at Cody's father. It's like, how many times are we going to do
I'll say this, and I know I talk about my son way too much, but he's one of my litmus tests. Again, huge Cody Rhodes fan, 8 years old, hates Drew McIntyre, hates The Rock, hates all the people he's supposed to hate. And when Drew came out and he's burning the photo of Dusty and Cody together, the photograph, my son goes, well, doesn't he have other copies of that?
He's got the same thing.
He's 8 years old and he's going like, that's not his only one, right?
Yeah, we were joking too, like, oh, it's not as if he could just print out another one.
Not like some faded old photo from like the 50s or something. You know what I mean? Like, I'm sure he's got others.
And the thing is, like, these two guys in particular have been so good at this kind of thing. Drew's program with Punk a year or two ago, like, so intensely personal, and it worked so well. And Cody and Roman, Cody and even Cena to a lesser extent have been able to tell these really personal stories. But something about this one has just been a little hollow. Cody showing up at Drew's house and that whole thing was just a little, I don't know. Is that it's been good? It's not bad, but
One thing that I think they've tried to do and they've been somewhat successful at was in the very beginning of Cody's run as the champion, it seemed like he was a little too buttoned up. Like, I kept wanting him, like, even with the Roman Reigns feud itself, I kept hoping they would let him really cut loose more. Like, he seemed to me to be so restrained. He's definitely made up for lost time, but I mean, like, there wasn't enough outrage. He was too well composed. He wasn't coming across as enough of a badass. Like, there are times when you don't need to have the suit on. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I feel like they have gotten better at that. Because he's got to kick ass sometimes. He can't just be crying and he can't just be taking the higher ground all the time. He's got to kick ass sometimes.
Yeah, I thought about that, seeing Cody interview John Cena on his podcast, and they were talking about, I think, going over their SummerSlam match, and the conversation is about them sitting in Cena's penthouse overlooking Central Park and having like a cognac and an expensive cigar and talking about their match. And I'm like, oh, how relatable. You both are just like the American dream and this hard times promos. Like, do you understand you're guys supposed to be like baby faces? And yeah, it is a little bit of a bad look. I think that's the kind of thing that helps Punk. I mean, Punk a lot more is sort of the everyman, even though that's supposed to be Cody's thing. But like, and I think the podcast, not that it's got a ton of viewers. I'm sure it does fine, but I think it's revealing of Cody in ways that I don't know that are super flattering. I mean, it's just him with his expensive booze. I don't know. I don't know if it's the greatest look.
No, there's a way to do it. That's the thing. Like, I've defended Cody in being the well-dressed champion because I think there's a great tradition of that, of like, you're going to be a respectable champion. Not everybody's Stone Cold Steve Austin, you're going to come out there and you're going to look the part. You're a star, you're a champion. But it's a fine line you walk of where you turn into a peacock. You know what I mean? Like you don't want to become Ric Flair, in the sense that Ric Flair did that because he was a heel. The alligator shoes, my house is worth, my shirt is worth more than your house and all that stuff. You don't want to go into that domain where you start to become a self-parody. Like, I saw John Cena when I started seeing Cena on some of these documentaries, and I'm like, the guy's wearing a 3-piece suit and literally drinking like a whiskey neat in like a tumbler glass.
Yeah.
Like, dude, what are you doing?
I saw him in one of these things
or something. What is
that? I saw him in one of these things give this lengthy a diatribe about how he got what was it? A flat white coffee, right? Which is his coffee of choice, and how he went someplace and it was served in the wrong size cup, And so clearly these people don't know a flat white. It's a flat white has to be certain ounces and a certain temperature. And I'm like, what's going on? And it's not intentional. I mean, this is really like, I think what some of these guys have become, and good for them for being loaded and all that. But like, you got to be mindful. I think that's maybe it is a change of direction in the conversation, right? But I think that's a problem throughout WWE right now, and I think some of it is the whole TKO thing and UFC working together, and they are very much steering away from being the family-friendly, accessible product, and now being something else. The one thing that I thought was so telling a few months back when they did Raw in the Garden, and back in the day, I'd be at every one of these, but now I'm completely priced out of going to just about anything when like the minimum is $400, something like that, to get through the door for a Raw. And there was, I forget who it was, but there was some segment, wrestler goes and takes off his shirt and throws it to the fans. And then later they show that Pete Davidson caught it at ringside. And like, what does that tell you, that like a wrestler takes off a shirt, throws it in the audience, and a celebrity catches it,
I don't know if we're allowed to say the word douchey on here. You can censor me, but it's getting very douchey. I'll just put it that way. That's the best word I can use as an English major to describe what's happening to the product.
And I think we've talked about it, but it's the same problem with UFC, in that they pat themselves in the back so much about live gates and attendance and all that stuff, like not appreciating that what you're saying is that you're taking a lot of money from your fans and to the point where they can't afford it anymore.
I've said this, and I try to stress this when I worked there. You definitely got the sense. I'm not saying this is genuine. I know wrestling is a business and it's a work, but it was very much a conscious effort on the part of the company, and I think it came through to essentially like bow down to the fans, like kiss the ass of the fans, for lack of a better, like to really make it clear, like, you are the reason we're here. The fans, number one. Always, we were told a million times, always thank the fans, always thank the fans, always thank the fans. To give that power to the fans and make them feel, and I think that is not a priority anymore. And I think, like I said, I'm not saying that they were these magnanimous, fan-loving people, certainly not, but they were smart enough to know that that's a good idea from a business point of view. And I think now they're just like, who gives a damn? Just whatever. Either you want to buy these things or you don't. We don't care. We'll find other people who will. That's it.
The Royal Rumble was in Saudi Arabia. That tells you about that. And I'm sure there were some fans in that crowd who were genuine fans, who were very passionate and delighted to be there. But I also noticed some grown men sitting in the crowd looking at their mobile phones while the wrestling was happening in the ring. So that tells you where they are on the fan standpoint right now.
Yeah. I mean, just the optics of right. I mean, we already talked about it in as far as Royce Keys and a few other acts that they're not familiar with because they don't get some of this and they're part of the world. And then it does become like, well, then why are we running huge shows over there if this is not even like, these aren't, and this isn't a slight against the Saudi fans who I think it's pretty cool how much they have come around. I mean, like when Brie Bella came out and they know as loud as they did, I was like, holy cow, these people know Brie Bella.
Not only that, but I feel like some of the restrictions have loosened up because there was a lot of like, at least from a Saudi point of view, suggestive stuff like Brie and the Bellas doing their kind of like gyrations and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
What was that?
Lola Vice, was doing her hip shake. Even I thought, oh wow, they allowed her to do that. That was.
I know. Lola Vice doing her thing, and I mean, it's still tame, but they've come a long way from when they had them wrestling in like wool pajamas when they had the first time they came. So I mean, I get at least that's okay. I'm still, I still think it's a shame, but it's better.
Jason, what are you thinking in terms of what it's shaping up on the women's side for WrestleMania? So Liv versus somebody, and then you've got, Rhea and Io Sky and Jade Cargill's got a title. And I don't, not that frankly, it's as important that they put on, marquee matchups with the women, because it hasn't always been a priority. It's just sort of like who's on top at the time. But I guess, are there marquee women's matches to put on at WrestleMania?
I think there are, and I think that they should care about that, because in the past, some of the best matches at WrestleMania have been the women's matches.
Yeah.
Last year,
on the sky.
Yeah, and it's to me, that's someone. I mean, like you, Al, I think I was expecting Bianca Belair to make an appearance and maybe win the Rumble. Now, like Brian was talking about his son, I have an 8-year-old daughter who spent the week leading up to the Royal Rumble wearing a Liv Morgan t-shirt, and her telling me Liv was going to win this Rumble, and I should have listened. I should have put money on it. I don't know if Liv and Stephanie is a fine title match. I can also see, because Liv eliminated Raquel from the Royal Rumble, Liv and Raquel could end up tangling at WrestleMania, and the Judgment Day could kind of implode. I'm still waiting for that to happen. The Judgment Day to just fall apart. Jade's a trickier one. I think if Bianca makes a return and maybe wins Elimination Chamber, you've got a good story with Jade and Bianca there. Io Sky to me is someone that they should be really looking at, and I think Io might have been a fine winner of the Rumble as well. She's very, very popular. She's gaining more and more momentum. They've stuck her in a tag team with Rhea, which both of them are super over, but I think Io is someone that I would like to see them separate and really get behind and push towards. But I think there's plenty you can do. I would like to see some of the newer girls get a chance. I think Sol Ruka did a great job in the Royal Rumble.
Yeah. She was the one who, to me, really kind of broke out as a star. She's got that great finisher, which is like maybe the most innovative finisher in all of WWE, and just has a great look, very charismatic. So she could go really far.
Yeah, I agree. There's plenty you can do there. I would like to see her moved up with that. I mean, you've got Jordan Grace on the main roster now who can do good things. Chelsea Green is always worth a lot in my book. He's so talented. There's a ton there, and I hope they do kind of get some current attention going forward, because there is marquee matches to be had. You've got a lot of talented women, and I hope they put some effort behind it.
One match that I wondered if they're thinking about coming out of the Rumble is Rhea and Io versus the Bella Twins for the tag team title, because I think there was a moment there where the four of them were looking at each other, and it's like, well, I mean, I guess there's some marquee value in that, but it does feel like maybe not the best use of two of your best female workers in Rhea and Io. You could just do Rhea and Io again, run it back. I mean, they had that great match at Evolution. If one of them had the title, Stephanie's doing is really solid, but it does feel like, are we really going to headline or have a women's world title with Stephanie Vaquer? I think it'd be hard to get fans that invested in something like that, even though Liv is really over. So we will see. We mentioned other big story coming out of the Rumble, AJ Styles retiring. There was, I guess, some amount of expectation that this is what's going to happen. There's even, I guess, sort of a spoiler by Nakamura in an interview saying that AJ had all but told him that was the plan from way back. And it made sense. I mean, he started his WWE career in the Rumble 10 years ago. So in retrospect, I mean, it was sort of obvious. Really good match. I thought.
Very good.
Is this really the end for AJ Styles? I got to say, among everybody who's retired, it does feel like he is the most likely to sort of pull a Mick Foley or a Ric Flair and be back in there in a few months.
Yeah, but like Mick Foley and Ric Flair, I think it's much more likely he's going to be doing it somewhere else. I think this is probably the end for him, at least for any foreseeable future in WWE. But I could see him going back to Japan. I could see him eventually making his way to AEW and doing some kind of like dream match tour there. I could see some things like that happening. I just think I think he definitely believes right now, and I think that he's done with WWE. And I think that's the WWE point of view that, down the road, I know Foley came back and did some things. And obviously we saw what happened with Edge. But I mean, like, if he does come back, I don't think it's anytime soon at all in WWE.
I mean, he's been talking retirement for years and years and years. He's got kids who I know the thought was he wants to be there for their childhood. I imagine his youngest kid has got to be probably 12 by now. So I don't know if it becomes less of an issue and him thinking like, well, then I guess I could stay on the road. Unlike some of these other acts, you really get the sense that he loves wrestling. I mean, it is, and the actual wrestling part of it, and he could still really go. I mean, it's crazy. I brought this up before, but I was watching on a Saturday before the regular Rumble. I had some old Royal Rumbles on, and I put on Royal Rumble 93, and Ric Flair was the first person in, and number 2 was Bob Backlund. And the announcers making a fuss about Bob Backlund at age 43, this inspirational comeback. I mean, that'd make him one of the younger people in the WWE roster right now. Because what's AJ? Is he 47, 48? He's got to be up there and looks amazing. And has barely lost any speed off of his fastball. So there is that part where I wonder, on one hand, I'm pushing 50. On the other hand, I could still totally do this and do it on the highest level. So I don't know. Would you like to see him go over to AEW, Jason?
I'd like to see him go to TNA.
Yeah,
I think like Brian said, I think he is genuinely done with WWE, certainly for now. But I will be shocked if AJ does not wrestle in AEW or TNA or New Japan by the time the year is over. I think he will. I think he'll want to tangle with Samoa Joe again. He'll want to maybe clash with Omega. He's buddies with Frankie Kazarian and TNA, so I think there's a bunch of stuff he'll still want to do before he really calls it quits.
Do you take that to mean that WWE is sort of pushing him out?
No, I don't think so. I think this is his decision. I think, AJ has never been about anything other than what he does in the ring. He's never been about the celebrity that comes with being a wrestler or any of that kind of stuff. He likes to wrestle, and he likes to wrestle and have good matches, and particularly with people he likes. And so I don't think WWE pushed him out. I just think it came to a natural end, and I think he maybe thought, yeah, do you know what? I've done everything here. I'm never going to be Roman Reigns or John Cena or Cody Rhodes, so I've probably done as much as I can, and there's still some things I would like to do while I'm still relatively young enough to do them and healthy enough to do them. And I think that it just came to a natural end.
Yeah. I mean, a much different, perspective, but I sort of thought the same about Tommaso Ciampa, who I guess is over in AEW, and it's another guy who, like, for all the flack that some wrestlers have, I think, rightfully gotten for choosing AEW over WWE. He's a guy who, like, when that opportunity came up, I think it's like, yeah, of course you got to leave. I mean, that you did everything you're going to do here, and that's a guy who in AEW, not that he goes and becomes a main eventer or a world champion, and maybe he does, but it is a clean slate for him over there. And to a lesser or a different way, I think you could say the same thing about AJ Styles in WWE. Yeah, I mean, what was there? He just came out of a tag team title reign with Dragon Lee, a championship that's not getting much attention. But he also was a guy, kind of like Finn Balor, who they would always rotate back into that main event VIX, every few years.
He was WWE champion for like a year, right? Or maybe more. And yeah, he was somebody that could go in and out. Talking about Styles, I mean, the AEW fan base will adore him. I mean, they want to love him. I'm sure they're hoping that he comes there. But Tommaso Ciampa, like you said, that even more so. It's like he was a guy that was made for NXT. He was made for NXT. That was a place for him to thrive. He could have been like an NXT lifer. Like, I look at some guys for different reasons, and I say that, like, somebody who's been there now so long, Tony D'Angelo, I think, what's he been there? Yeah. He's been there like 4 or 5 years, and there's no talk of calling him up. And I think that is fine, because I think a guy like that will die on the vine on the main roster, because that mafia gimmick will get him laughed out of the building. I'm sorry. Mm-hmm. He'll turn into Little Guido. No offense to Little Guido, but I think in NXT, it works. Leave him there. And I think Ciampa was a guy like that. His days were numbered the minute him and Gargano, hate to say, the minute they called them up, and they just seemed like two little forgettable guys. Like, it was almost insane how, all to the credit of, and Triple H at the time and booking NXT and everything, made it look like World War III with those two guys. And then the second they showed up on Raw or SmackDown, you're just like, what the hell? It was almost like when Taz popped up in WWE, and you're thinking, wow, Paul Heyman was a genius.
Yeah.
It was a situation like that where they showed up and I was like, they look like children. I never really noticed this before. And I think he was probably, like you said, he did all that he could do. And look, he's got the title now. I'm sure he was promised that as one of the conditions for coming over. And he's right in the mix. He fits right in. And I think, honestly, Styles will fit right in there, too, if he chooses to do that.
I think with Styles more than Tommaso. Again, Tommaso was not burning any bridges going over to AEW, I don't think. And he said all the right things since leaving. I do think WWE would be, for whatever it's worth, I don't think they'd be happy about AJ Styles going over to AEW.
Well, it depends on what had happened behind the scenes, because at first I remember wondering if this was a similar situation like what happened with Edge, where with Edge, it was a guy who had just been there so long. He had the big comeback. He kind of seemed to be out of step now with the way things were going. They didn't really seem to have much for him. And they just basically were like, you can explore other options. It's okay. Like take the deal. It was almost like that. And I wonder if that's similar. We don't know. I mean, maybe it was. Maybe they were saying, look, we don't know what else we want to do for you. So if you want to do other stuff, go do it.
Yeah. Who was under the mask at in the Royal Rumble? It's one thing we haven't talked about. And there's all kinds of speculation out there from, I've heard Logan Paul, I've heard Jake Paul, I've heard Bryan Danielson, I've obviously Seth Rollins. And any thoughts on who it will likely be, which is who it ends up being doesn't necessarily have to even be who it was.
Right. That's true.
Yeah.
We're not talking about El Grande Americano here.
I know. I think we're clear on that one. Who was that he attacked anyway? Was it Braun Breaker? Right.
Braun Breaker.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know. I really don't know. I have no idea.
I'll confidently say, again, just because it's so obvious, that it can't be Seth Rollins unless, they're doing it where last time it wasn't, but this time it is. I mean, It just seems too obvious. There's too much of an opportunity to do fun things and not have it be him. I can't imagine it would be, well, I mean, Logan Paul would be a shocker because he's in the vision. But I feel like with Austin Theory doing it, it was a way to bring somebody back or bring them in or do some. I feel like it's better that way if it's somebody that either we haven't seen in a while or is brand new to the company. I feel like that's more effective. I'm not saying it's what they're going to do. It just would be weird for it to be Logan Paul. Maybe Jake Paul. I could sort of see that, because then you could have, although God help us, then you could have Jake Paul versus Logan Paul. I don't know. I mean,
is it how you reintroduce a Chris Jericho? Someone like that?
I mean, that one actually makes sense. And I
mean, it didn't look like him, but like you said, Al, it could be anybody, right?
Yeah. But I also think, like, if you're getting Jericho back, what's the match for WrestleMania, right? And he's not going to work on top, but he is going to be he does need to be kind of a special attraction. And a Jericho Braun Breaker match, I think maybe that's something that works for me, right? I mean, and I think it's something that Braun can go over on a legend. Other one I heard, Bryan Danielson, and I don't know what the logistics of that are, but Bree's there now.
Right.
And another guy who is getting up there, who, despite being up there, you wonder, or you get a sense that, he still has a few things on his bucket list. And now coming back to WWE, fresh coat of paint, new guys to work with. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the fact that Bree is there would make it not totally implausible. But I almost feel like the fact that he's wound down now, even in AEW, a company that would probably let him do whatever he wants to do, it makes me think he's kind of done.
Yeah. We'll see. A last thing I think of, Sami Zayn, he started off the year with that promo where he talked about this is the year that I win the world title, and they build Saturday Night's Main Event kind of around him in Montreal, and then if ever there was the stage to put a world title on him, you could argue that it would have been Saudi Arabia, in that context. And they didn't do it, nor do I think they should have. I mean, I don't think that was the right call to make. But it does feel like they're trying to kind of get back, a place in time, the heat that he had in Montreal working with Roman Reigns years ago. And there was a push at the time. This was the time to do it. And it does feel like years later, that window has closed. And as great as Sammy is, and I think he's terrific, I'm just not feeling it right now. And he it's sort of the inspirational babyface kind of thing. But he doesn't have, it's lacking the kind of the charm that he had as the honorary Uce and all that. It's all to say, what do you do with this guy right now? Another guy who's got to be right around 40, I would think.
Yeah, he's a classic example of, the setup right now where sometimes guys just overstay their welcome.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's just, at this point, he's overstayed his welcome. I mean, he could go away and come back, or he could go somewhere else and come back. But it's like these guys, when they stick around forever, it gets to a point where what else are you going to do? It's like he's basically a main event jobber. I mean, I don't know how else to describe it. He's the kind of guy now where you could put him in a big match. He's credible, but he's not going to win. And I don't know how long you can keep that going for before it's just untenable. Like, I hate to say this, and it's weird because it's a world title match, WWE title match, but the match with Drew, it just felt like filler on that show. It felt like they didn't even need to have it. It was like we need to have a title match kind of thing. It almost felt like what I was talking about with Cody, where they'd just be like, okay, who could he work with? Okay, you. That's kind of what, like, did anybody think he was going to win that? I mean, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I don't know. I feel like it's a dead end right now for him. It's
it's
a
Royal.
Yeah.
Sorry. No, I was just going to say, whenever the Royal Rumble was first announced as being in Saudi Arabia, I was convinced Sami was going to win the Royal Rumble, and turned out he wasn't even in it. He was in a random title match that he wasn't going to win instead. I do still think they will have him win the world title at some point, most likely in Saudi at WrestleMania next year. Absolutely. The question is just, is it too late by that stage?
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's the upside is you've got two world titles. So there's like the real world title, then there's that other world title. So winning a world title doesn't even necessarily mean working in the main event. So yeah, they could do it. They could put the World Heavyweight Championship on him, assuming that he's over to that level a year from now. But it's an interesting thing, kind of going full circle, the conversation about Roman Reigns. Roman and the bloodline were so incredibly over, and now a couple years later, look at everybody, right? Sammy's not as over as he was. Jey Uso now, after peaking last year at the Royal Rumble, doesn't mean as much. Certainly, Jimmy Uso, Solo Sikoa doesn't mean almost anything now.
It's shocking, though. I mean, because they were, for a minute there, they were trying to make Solo the top heel, and now he's just totally out of the running. It's amazing the amount of how they have stepped on the brakes with that guy. And Jey Uso, they pulled the plug. I mean, the minute they put him back with Jimmy again, it's like, well, you failed. I mean, I'm being very harsh and blunt. It's like, that was your Shawn Michaels moment, and now they decided to get the Rockers back together instead.
And that's what worries me a little bit about.
I mean, right? I know, Jason, you're laughing, but I think you agree with me. It's like saying, Brett, you did really, really well, but we're bringing Neidhart back, and we're going to.
Yeah, and it's what worries me a little bit about going all in on Roman again, because it's not the act that was so over for years there, and the act was the bloodline, and it was Roman as the domineering tribal chief above all of them. And then when they did it at War Games a year later, kind of got the band back together, there was like some good feeling about it. But Roman without the bloodline on his own as a babyface, or do they sort of force a bloodline reunion to kind of warm that up again? I don't know. It just does feel like they're having a hard time letting go of this.
No. Yes, they are. But in good news, maybe this will give them something new that they could be nostalgic about for the next 10 to 20 years instead of constantly harping on the Attitude Era endlessly, which is so old now that like the majority of the fans weren't even born yet when it happened.
Yeah, no, I hear you. Absolutely. All right, guys, it was a lot of fun. Thanks so much. We covered a lot, which is good. Before we get out of here, Jason, anything to talk about? You're still working on the newsletter, and you got something for the next magazine?
I do. We've got some stuff lined up. The year-end awards issue just came out digitally last week, depending when this goes out. So by
that's
all means,
right. I'll be plugging that one. Yeah, but I don't have my paper copy yet. Yeah.
Yep. No, so it's always a big one. It's always a lot of fun to work on that. So go to pwi-online.com, pick up some magazines, subscribe. You can subscribe to the PWI weekly newsletter, which is free. We've got the weekly ratings that get updated every Friday on our website. So lots going on PWI related.
Yes. I totally forgot about the Earned Awards again, in part because I don't have my physical copy yet. And frankly, I don't even know who a lot of the awards winners are. I saw Mike Santana celebrating with the most inspirational, which was the one that I was really pulling for. So of all the awards, that was one I was really happy to see. Very, very much well earned. Brian, how is the book tour? I don't know if we're calling it a book tour. I saw you at a library recently, right?
Yeah, it was great. I went up to a library in Massachusetts in a town called Agawam, and we had a great turnout there. It was just like really, really solid turnout. I got to talk about the book and show off some photos that didn't make it. The Irresistible Force, The Life and Times of Gorilla Monsoon. And I had, the place was packed, and the librarian, it was funny. She said she never saw so many men at the library at the same time, which was sad and encouraging. But I have also want to mention that it's still doing really well. It's still in the top 10 and usually top 5 wrestling books on Amazon. And it's really cool to see because it has staying power, because books come and go on that list, and some rise up and some go down. And I guess, the audiobook version just came out, so people must really like that. But if people want signed copies, like I've been saying, I'm personally selling my own signed autograph copies. If anybody wants them, they could reach out to me at brianrsolomon@yahoo.com.
Excellent. Thank you so much, guys. We will do it again soon.